Hey guys, welcome to Nerdy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdicus Ryan, and today I'm joined by an assortment. I got Ted, Nate, Scott, and also Nerdicus Adam joining us for our Nine of the NAG. So that's for our Patreon supporters. It's kind of like a viewer directed content hangout. So we're going to talk about Arkham Horror, favorite RPG characters, and all other sorts of fun things. So with that, we were talking off camera a little bit with Adam about he started into RPGs with fourth edition. So I'm actually kind of curious, how did you sort of come to the hobby kind of that late in the game? Like what was from you not playing RPGs to actually just starting playing RPGs in fourth?
Actually, I was originally from a small town in Maine, like
Okay.
small town, so about 5,000 people. So in that kind of environment where there were more churches than restaurants, for example, D&D
Wow.
was kind of the devil, I guess is the best way to describe it. Um, so
Panic still hanging
yeah,
on
yeah, like I
you.
started I started playing Magic the Gathering. That was kind of my first kind of foray, I guess, into fantasy genre. And unfortunately, I just really never had the opportunity to jump into some D&D until a few years ago when some neighbors I had were like, "Hey, do you want to come check out a game of D&D? Watch us play around for a night?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And since
Yeah.
then, I've been one of the core members, so it's been great. And I know 4E is kind of the I want to say
It it's
redheaded stepchild.
it's got a bad reputation. In my opinion, with 4E, it's not a bad game. It just doesn't feel like D&D. So
Well, one of the things that's interesting is you said you were a Magic the Gathering player, and I think Magic the Gathering players are. I don't think there's a more complex game that has a broader player base than Magic the Gathering. And so I think fourth edition was incredibly attractive to Magic the Gathering players, but fourth edition really had an issue with its community. And so the biggest problem with fourth edition was it just split the community. And so when you take half your fan base and they're not going to play the game, you got a serious problem there. It's actually not a unique problem. There are a lot of games that have had that problem, but fifth edition has kind of fixed that. But I'm a Magic the Gathering player as well, and I love Magic the Gathering and I love fourth edition. The only thing that was wrong with fourth edition is it just didn't have everybody's buy-in. So
Yeah, it definitely made me love D&D. Like now,
oh yeah.
yeah, I mean it. Like I jumped in full ham when I went in. Like I think it was 2 games in. My character had he was like an older former town guard at Neverwinter, and he sold his some of his soul to the Raven Queen
Oh wow.
in order to gain some longevity in life. And from there, it was just one horrible mistake after another.
Oh, that's rough. That's a dark background. That's dark.
But the move to fifth edition, I have to say, I love fifth edition.
Oh,
Like
Now,
it's a work of art.
now, Adam, I'm curious. Did you have any sort of reticence to going from fourth edition to a new edition of the game? Because like we've lived through the changes of editions of the game, but coming in as a new player, were you kind of like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how I feel about the idea of a new edition of D&D coming out.
actually, I would say you guys put me at ease on that quite a bit because when we were first discussing it in our group, I started kind of doing some research online, and that's kind of how I discovered your channel actually.
nice.
Oh,
And
nice.
and it was nice to be able to watch and actually have like listen to in-depth discussions about, you guys have great videos, all of the classes, all of the races, and I was like, okay, all right, well, these guys are, well versed players and DMs. They've embraced it, so let's give it a whirl. And so at that point I was like, yeah, let's take the plunge, guys, let's go for it, and haven't really looked back.
So Ryan brought up, playing through the editions. I have literally played second edition, third edition, fourth edition, and fifth edition with Dave, Ryan, and Nate. So I mean, we've seen the gamut of change throughout the editions. So.
I didn't play fourth.
That's right. Right.
I took a vacation, a long vacation.
Yeah. Yeah, I often describe fifth edition as like a greatest hits compilation because it has elements of second and third, but it even ports in the simplification of skill sets that fourth edition had. It pulls that streamlining of the rules in to fifth edition as far as that goes, because you really don't need 40 some skills to describe all the actions a character could take.
You don't need hide and move
combat.
silently.
Really listen and spot and search. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a curve of that going on there.
But I when I look at fifth edition's build, I think anything it took from fourth, it tried to put it in as cleverly as possible and hide it because of so many fans' bad feelings about fourth.
Chronology, but it's very much like basically they gave you at-will powers, but they just called them cantrips or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think fifth edition succeeded for two primary reasons. One, I'm not sure if you guys have heard this term before, but I've heard a few people using it, and I think it really does fit. The member berries, and it's like remember berries, eat the remember berries, right? So a lot of people with fifth edition, you're remembering all, third edition, first edition, and second edition, first, second, and third edition. Remember berries are in a whole bunch of products now, Transformers and all, and fifth edition has those remember berries, but then it's beautifully married with the very best from indie games. So I really feel that fifth edition really snuck in awesome ideas from Burning Wheel, from Dungeon World, some of the, and I think those, those two, the whole idea of player agency, it's all right there, and it's really great that it's really exciting, Adam, to hear that somebody could come from fourth edition and have a smooth transition into fifth.
Yeah, I think one aspect that made it easy was in fourth edition, my first character, which probably always remain one of my favorites, was a warlord. And when I was watching y'all's video on the fighter, and then you were talking about the battle master, I was like, oh. And I go and look, and it's basically the warlord, a lot of the abilities, but ice can still do large amounts of damage, which it seemed like the warlord in fourth edition, it was a lot of support, and you didn't really get to do, you didn't really get to do substantial attacks.
The warlord was your commander, your leader type. He wasn't the one to go out there and do the damage. Well, now the battle master can really dish it out. So
yeah, and so that made it like when I made Merritt Price, and he's a fighter character that I had made previously, and the players that I play with recommended and asked me to bring him back. And so going from fourth edition to fifth edition, I'm actually playing the prequel version of my character from fourth edition.
So is it generally like, are you taking the character and just starting him over at level 1 with the same kind of mentality, same personality, or is it legitimately, oh, this is just that guy?
The personality is definitely the same. He's a good time, likes brown ale and pickled fish. Like those are his things. And he in the fourth edition, he was a knight. That was the class, the fighter knight variant. And so this edition I just went fighter battle master, and he was a squire for a knight for way too long, and he never got knighted, as the knight promised him on the morrow you'll be knighted, but it never happened. The knight died. So now Merritt is basically working to become a knight, but he's not the model of chivalry. He's a guy that would probably win a knighthood in a fight and get knighted.
Not win it through honor.
Exactly.
Nice.
But he's good. He has a good overall arc, but sometimes, does the end justify the means? Yeah, we can do that.
So I have a quick question. So one, well, actually, that's really exciting. And to tell the truth, I think that's a pretty rare situation where you've run a character and then you're requested to bring that character back. And I'm kind of curious. So one of the things I see is there's a lot of game masters out there, and people who like the game master. I mean, generally, it's very rare for you to have a game master who's not kind of has some control issues, right? So one of the things I find is there's a lot of overreach from game masters where they forget, hey, I control every single thing in this world except the player characters. And a lot of times you have game masters saying, I have this whole list of things your player character has to match. So my question is, did you see that more of, hey, this is a real compliment that they want this character to return, or did you see, this one huge choice that I have and all these choices that are connected to it, I'm losing?
I guess it was a huge compliment because the excitement when I said, okay, yeah, I'll play Merritt again, and they were just so happy that I was bringing this character back because they enjoyed playing alongside that character.
Oh, that's awesome! Yeah,
So
to me, I think when you said he liked brown ale and pickled fish, right? That's kind of a small thing, and it's kind of not, right? Because to me, if you're saying that about your character, the chances are you really had a strong sense of who this character was, and I'm betting that's a big part of why they wanted that character back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think there's two things going on here. I'm certain that you had a lot of role playing going on with this guy, and you really had it, synced in. And then of course the other side is, as a player for however many decades I've been doing this, or how many years I've been doing this, like there's always that love of creating a new PC and checking out something else. Was there any kind of remorse or dissatisfaction or dissatisfaction when they said, "Oh, do you play this guy again instead of you creating a new character?"
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I was actually thrilled because going from the 4th edition to the 5th edition, it has a new character feel.
Yeah.
Especially as far as mechanics. But that role playing aspect, Sir Merritt, or not Sir Merritt because he's not knighted yet, but he likes to drink, he likes to get rowdy. He typically, if there's a tavern, he's the first one that will jump up and join a bar fight.
So let me ask this question: is the GM who ran Merrick the first time through the same GM for this game?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I'm actually also curious, did any other legacy characters from the previous campaign trickle into this other than Merrick?
Not yet.
Or is it just that one character?
Not yet, but now there's some thoughts out there, like one of our regular DM, his wife who also plays, she's thinking about bringing back one of her paladins who also was cut short from a previous campaign. You know how sometimes you get those campaigns that are kind of, you get really excited, you develop this great character, you jump in, it lasts for 6 weeks, and something happens. It fizzles out. The DM, gets tired. So you kind of lose it. You're like, wow. Like for me with Merritt, I never got to take Merritt. I think I took him to. I think he got to level 6 in 4th edition was the highest he ever got to. So I never really got to see that potential. And now with this 5th edition, I think he's even going to be better.
What was the background? What background did you attach to him?
I took what is it, actor with the gladiator variant.
Nice.
Entertainer.
Yes, there you go, entertainer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's cool. And that's kind of neat. Like that's one of those huge differences from fourth to fifth, where you have your story, but there's some mechanical benefits, which is really nice.
Yeah, I really enjoy the character, like just the character creation of fifth edition is just
Yeah.
it's a joy, really, to kind of go through and and I'm actually Merritt's a human, but I'm actually a huge fan of the halflings, and I always felt in fourth edition like the halflings were kind of screwed, or as all the small races were.
Right.
But in fifth, I mean, I feel like the halflings they've really got a leg up. I mean, the Lightfoot halfling. I have the wild magic sorcerer that I'm playing in another campaign. And that's a blast. I mean, luckily I have a DM. They play into the tides of chaos. I think Dave said like basically whenever you do it, roll for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my DM is at also. He's basically like, yeah, it's a fundamental part of the class. Go with it. So I've aged 6 years. I lost my hair. I've levitated a bunch of times. Turned into
Have you turned blue yet?
I haven't turned blue yet, and I haven't had the bubbles come out of my mouth. But I haven't.
Have you been a sheep? Have you been a sheep?
Not yet, and I
fireballed the party and been a sheep.
and got rode by goblins, right?
Yes.
Yep, that did happen. We did have a goblo rodeo that did occur. Yeah.
So, as you can tell, Ryan has played the Chaos Sorcerer, and as you mentioned, halflings. That's kind of Ryan's favorite race. So.
Yeah, they're pretty solid, especially like, they're really with the rerolling ones. Like, if you do that, well, Nate's also done the thing with the diviner, but you take that, the lucky feat, and then diviner, and you're just messing with dice all day long, which is really fun.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
My favorite thing to do with any character with the lucky feat is fish for disadvantage that can then turn into super advantage. Like, how can I spin the narrative of this to explain how this works out into my favor? Because it kind of makes me think of the Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He also had Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, which is going to be a series. I forget what network's doing it, but so that's going to be like a network television series. But anyway, it's this detective who solves every crime through happenstance. And so, like, that's basically having the lucky feat, where you do things that you shouldn't be able to do, or you Inspector Gadget it, where like people are like working around you to make things work in your favor, or he would just bumble into the best opportunity happening.
That's great that you say Inspector Gadget. Actually,
yeah.
I've been a big proponent that whenever I'm asked, "Oh, who's your favorite superhero?" I always go with Inspector Gadget, even though for the most part I get laughed at and sometimes have things thrown at me because he doesn't technically count. I got to stick with him just because I enjoyed that series so much.
Because he's not even the one to solve anything. It's always Penny that does the work.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Penny was the real hero there. Yeah.
And Brain, can't forget Brain.
Exactly.
Dog.
He would have counted as a superhero if Marvel or DC had written it. I don't know.
Yeah.
He would have counted.
He had the powers. He just didn't have the ability.
Yeah.
So a question for y'all. Have you noticed any of your longtime players? Because I imagine there's probably even people outside of your Nerdarchy group you probably play with. I'm not sure, but did you face much apprehension doing any transitions from edition to edition, even going back to previous editions?
Well, I will tell you that when we went from second to third, I put up a big stink, and I'm certain that Ryan and Nate can share some of the memories. But once we actually fully moved in, it was like, okay, I guess I can see how this works, and we didn't really ever look back. And then when we actually got to fourth, I was like, do we really have to start this all over again?
I just bought every book ever made.
And literally, I've got a stack of third edition books that's taller than my 8-year-old son. And I was at a spot when fourth came out that financially, I just wasn't ready to start that all over again.
Yeah.
when we went to fifth, for me, we weren't playing D&D at the time. We had started Nerdarchy, so we dove in head first, and we're kind of loving it from the beginning. So I don't know if any of the rest of you want to share your edition change stories.
I'll jump in. So fifth edition, the transition from fourth to fifth edition, there was zero apprehension. So fourth, I really liked fourth edition. I liked it a lot. There's a player who's just joined Ted's game, Kurt Lehman, who I met playing fourth edition. He's one of the best players I've ever seen because he like has all the mechanics in his head, but he also is really strong on the roleplay side, and a lot of times you don't get that solid mix. So, a lot of great players played 4th edition. So, I'm a huge 4th edition fan. But it was so clear to me it had absolutely split the community. And I would have long conversations with 3rd edition players who just, were not on board with 4th. So, when they announced 5th edition, I was super excited. And I've kind of transitioned on Dungeons & Dragons edition specifically, where I really look forward to them. And the 5th edition, the transition from 4th edition to 5th edition was like it was joyous for me, and the reason why was they did all that play testing, and so I would get the play test packs and I would just read them. I wasn't actually play testing it, but I would just read it, and I got to see what they were doing, and so it was literally like 2 years where we got to see how it was transitioning from 4th to 5th, and like the meta concerns, like all the news about 5th edition coming out, was just like candy to me. Like I just ate it up. Yeah.
You know what's really interesting about it is like if you followed all that judiciously, like I think there'd be tremendous sort of insight into the game design process because you get to see all the iteration of people, the professional designers designing the game, and then the feedback loop of the crowd source, playing, telling them what they liked, what they didn't like, and then how that fed back into later expansion. So it'd be really interesting to follow the whole trajectory of that.
It was fantastic, and so I just really loved the transition to 5th edition. And now, I was so excited about it that I went back and I got the 3 core rulebooks, the PHB, the MM, and the DMG for editions 1 and 2. So at this point, I own the core rulebooks for every single edition. And honestly, I have to say, I love 5th edition. I hope it lasts 10 years. In my opinion, all editions should last 10 years. And so I'm hyped for 6th edition because I love when the transition happens because I like seeing all everything that's connected to a new edition coming. The other issue is I don't buy source books anymore. I only buy core rulebooks, and which is really helpful. Especially, it makes you really almost immune to edition issues. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I really liked like the supplemental books for, say, a Dark Sun or Eberron or something like that, where it is campaign setting specific type of stuff. And like, I don't need new things to just have new things, but I want stuff that's actually relevant to that campaign setting. Like, I haven't really loved what they've done with the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide or Horde of the Dragon. Like, so you have like the modules, and then you like. Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide is kind of the most thing that's like a 3rd edition and earlier Splat book, but even that didn't really feel like one of those.
Well, I think I understand why people get source books, but just for me personally, one of the things I've realized is just when I buy a new core rule book, I just get so much. Like, you get to see a new world, you get to see new art, you get to see how they're designing, you get new rules. Whereas with the source book, it's a little bit more iteration. So it's and there's so many games out now. In the old days, there weren't that many role-playing games, but there's new core rulebooks coming out all the time. So it's just one of those things. But yeah.
Thanks, Kickstarter.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you. Yeah.
So Scott brought up all the role-playing games that are out there. I actually have picked up the Dresden RPG.
Dresden Files RPG.
Yeah, I haven't really delved into it. Have you guys had much experience with that?
I have the PDFs of it, and it's I believe it uses the Fate Core system, which Scott was nice enough to run the Fate Accelerated game for us. So I haven't really delved too deep into the Dresden Files rules and game itself, although it is one of my favorite book series. So much so that I actually ran a Dresden Files game for a while, pre-Nerdarchy with, the group here. And, we used the Mutants and Masterminds system just because I was more familiar with that rather than, trying to run out and get everybody familiar with a new system. So.
Yeah, same. Actually, the Dresden Files game, I'm in the same boat where I've read a lot. So I'm a huge fan of Fred Hicks, and Fred Hicks owns the company that does Fate. And one of the things that's really interesting is I read a lot about Fred Hicks and about his company. And one of the reasons why is I think he's by far one of the biggest innovators and one of the best game designers out there. And one of the things, and I've read a lot about the Dresden Files game, because one of the things that's interesting is the Fate core system was really funded by the Dresden games, and that company is still being funded by the Dresden File games, particularly the CCG, because they're able to do a lot of innovation and try some really unusual things because they have pretty much a constant flow of money coming in from being associated with the Dresden Files IP. And actually, since Ted talked so well about Dresden Files, I've read the first 5 novels now, and they're absolutely fantastic. I think the only reason we haven't done more with Dresden Files is just there's a lot of other games that are in line in front of it, so far. But yeah,
there's so much inertia to learning new game system, and then also your whole gaming group learning a new game system.
True, exactly.
Kind of the reason why Dungeons and Dragons is the default game system for everyone is because everybody's familiar with it at least passingly,
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Scott,
so there is that.
Scott, if you've only gotten up to book 5, you haven't even gotten to Fantastic yet.
I hear you. I hear you.
That's actually what my normal DM. I think I finished the first 3. I do audiobooks.
No, audiobooks are awesome for that.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, I love them. So, and I got the name of the narrator, but he does an amazing job.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's the guy from Buffy or Angel or something like that.
James Marsters.
James Marsters. Yep.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, Spike, also better known as Spike.
And he actually said the same thing to me. He said, "Yeah, once you get into some of the later books, that's when it really takes off."
Well, I don't know how much you want to direct the conversation towards Dresden Files, but when Butcher actually wrote those books, he had the first 3 written before Stormfront was legitimately sold. So it's only in book 4 that he really, when he started writing it, did he know that he had the capacity to really begin tying the books together. So that's where the story begins to take off. So 4 is really your launch pad, and I'm still waiting to find out when we're gonna get book 16, and I'm chomping at the bit. It's So you guys, if you've only gotten through that first chunk, you got a ways to go, and it's only amazing from here.
One of the things that's really interesting about the Dresden Files game, though, and I really like to study tabletop role-playing games at kind of the industry level, is it's an IP, it's an intellectual property role-playing game, and those are tough because it's tough getting somebody into a role-playing game overall, but then saying everybody has to read this book or, oh my goodness, maybe 16 books or 15 books, that's tough. So one of the things, so just so you're aware, I've finished at least 3 or 4 different campaigns for the Nerdarchy crew, and one of the games that I proposed was a game based on Butcher's latest book, which is Aeronauts Windlass, and that would have been kind of like a cyberpunk game based on a 600-page novel that James Butcher just wrote called Aeronauts Windlass, which is available as an audiobook. Highly recommend that, and I believe, and I'm really curious if who's going to make that into a tabletop role-playing game, because it is perfectly primed for an amazing tabletop role-playing game.
Yeah, the systems involved in that world are pretty awesome. Every once in a while I still get baffled at the concept of the world, and to have a society where it's like, yeah, we're not actually, on the ground. You're living on these spires.
It's wild.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
I haven't read the book yet. Watch what you say.
Yeah.
We didn't give anything away, man.
No spoilers. No spoilers. Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome though.
Yeah, I've listened to or read the Dresden Files at least 3 times. So,
wow.
But I haven't watched. I haven't listened to or read the Aeronauts Win Last.
Aeronauts Win Last. Yeah, it's really quite excellent.
So I gotta check it out.
Yeah. I'm
actually really glad to hear that there's 16 books. That means
it was written that it's supposed to go to 20. He actually he of all the things he's written, he's not like the Dresden Files is not the thing he wants to do. He started it like in some kind of like writing class or college essay thing, and he actually wrote out a bullet pointed outline for the 20 books. And it was like, yeah, okay, here's this thing, and this is what's going to happen. And he's got the outline, kind of done. I don't know how much he's needed to modify based off of that outline, but it's supposed to end with an apocalyptic trilogy at 20 books. So
wow,
and we're closing in on the start of that. But Peace Talks has been, coming soon for a very long time. Yeah. In the heydays of his writing career, when he was writing Butcher as well as the Codex Alera, he was popping out a book every 6 months. So for literally 6 years, you got 12 books from him, and now it's been what, year and a half, 2 years.
He spoiled us.
Yeah,
he spoiled us good.
So. I don't know how long it was since Aeronauts Windless come out, but I feel like it's been a really long time, and still no date for Peace Talks.
Yeah, it's like trying to be a Game of Thrones fan. Waiting for that next. For the World of Ice and Fire, right?
Right.
Proper title.
Yeah, the Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Actually, you guys might know this. I could probably do research myself, but is there actually a tabletop RPG for a game?
I know that.
There absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I've been kind of involved in more than one of them. So it first came out through, I think it was a company called Guardians. It was a Canadian company. It was a long time ago, well over 10 years ago, and so yes, there was originally one, and that company actually lost the license, didn't do a great job with it. And then it transferred, I think, over to Green Ronin. I think Green Ronin has it right now, and I actually own the tabletop role-playing game. It's fantastic. It's really excellent game. One of the things it really does is like it goes into there's like 40 pages on heraldry, like what's on a shield in that game. It's crazy.
Oh.
So there's really excellent tabletop role-playing game out there for it. So it was canceled, and then Green Ronin has it now. And they do a good job with it. It's not a super popular one, and one of the reasons why is from a story perspective, it's challenging. It's one of these games where you need a really good game master, and you need top-notch players at every seat at the table.
Well, I mean, it's from what I've heard of the game, it's like you're least well served by settling conflict by a sword in that game, because it's very easy to die. It's a very lethal system, and like kind of fighting is your option of last resort. And there's only a few characters who are really good at it, and you're not good at much else though. And if you look at the world of Game of Thrones too, most characters who are just mostly good at fighting, they don't do very well in that world. It's about political power.
Well, I mean, there's nothing to say that you couldn't run that style of game in D&D. Like there's nothing other than the fact of, okay, well, you've got, there's not a whole lot of magic-y type characters in the in the books. I mean, obviously there's the Red Witch and there's dragons and what have you, but you're not seeing fireball and lightning bolt.
Yeah.
It's not there. Magic is clearly there. There's some of the special weapons and the whites and the White Walkers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, but you'd lose the whole feel if it was D&D combat instead of a more lethal variety. I mean, if you made it more lethal.
Yeah, 1 or 2 stabs just kills you in Game of Thrones, whereas like fighters just keep fighting all day. So yeah,
that is true. But I mean, it could be done in a way if someone didn't want to learn a new rule set.
Agreed.
So Adam, you had talked about some other things that you wanted to talk about. Pre this. So, do you want to talk about Arkham Horror or Cthulhian RPG at all?
Yeah, with Halloween coming up, oh, sorry,
you're breaking up on us.
Okay.
I know for me, I've never actually done a Cthulhian RPG. I have played Arkham Horror. And I've got a friend who's really into it, and for me, it's not worth not worth 6 to 8 hours of my time to play one session of Arkham Horror. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
Okay, I've played 2 games. My first game was done in less than 2 hours, and we won. And our second game was done in 3.5 hours, and we won again. So I have never played again because I've heard it's all downhill from there. I got my 2 wins in.
So I think it's interesting because so here's my take on Cthulhu and H.P. Lovecraft and RPGs and board games connected to H.P. Lovecraft. So one, I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. My favorite of his work is Out of the Mountains of Madness, which there's talk that could be made into a movie, which would be really exciting. But yeah, so I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. I've read quite a bit of his material. I really like his short stories, his novellas, all that content. From a tabletop role-playing perspective, it's been hard for... So, one, there's been a lot of debate over what is the best version to play if you play Cthulhu. And one of the things and I've read a ton about 7th edition, and there's a whole thing around 7th edition. But my, I hate to say it, but I have like a love affair with this particular tabletop role-playing game that is connected to H.P. Lovecraft and Cthulhu, and that is Cthulhu Tech. Right, so I have tried multiple times to sell this game to multiple groups, and so Cthulhu Tech is a like a space opera. No, actually, it's an anime big robot tabletop role-playing game merged with H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu Horror, and it is one of the best role-playing games out there. But it is almost impossible to get a table for.
Well, it's basically it's like big anime robots versus like kaiju with the Lovecraftian mythos mapped onto the kaiju in a way. Like,
it is exactly, but the art is amazing. The world is tremendous. It's just such a fantastic, well-crafted, beautifully made game. Now, one of the things, though, is I'm not the only guy who feels like it's hard to get a table around it. I think the guys who owned it actually just rolled up their website a little while ago. So it's a real sleeper, like no pun intended. But and the other thing, though, is I've just read articles and articles and articles about Cthulhu 7th edition, because one of the things, everything that I've heard and read about the Cthulhu tabletop role-playing games is this classic broken issue of, hey, I want to create a character, and then that character is going to go insane or die. And I think it's just a hard sell. And I've been in that same boat where I'm like, I'd really like to play Cthulhu. And then I got excited about 7th edition, but a ton of money was poured into 7th edition. And there's a whole, like, you can just read article after the creation of 7th edition Cthulhu, the Cthulhu game, but many people believe that with all the money and time and attention, that game is worse than like 6th edition or 4th edition, which is really kind of interesting, but and a little bit sad. Yeah.
The Cthulhu Tech, it sounds kind of like RPG of Knights of Sidonia, if you're familiar with
Knights of
Kinda.
Sidonia has been on my list. Yeah. So you watched through that? It was good.
Yeah, I watched it. I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
It's been on my
animation's a
list.
little bit rough to get used to, but
Yeah.
once you get used to it, it works out really well.
Like that cell shading, and yeah. So Cthulhu Tech. If you guys get a chance, definitely pick up a hard copy of it. It's just one of the most beautiful role playing games I've ever seen, and the people who wrote it. There are not that many people who've ever even seen this game, but it is a beautiful, beautiful game. It's extremely well crafted. The people have an immense respect for H.P. Lovecraft and for Japanese Big Robot. So and that's the other thing. To get this game going, you need 6 people who are huge Japanese robot fans and H.P. Lovecraft fans, which is like 4 people in the world. Like so, yeah.
Are there more travelers than that?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I would definitely get in on that game, Scott. But I'm one that I'm now in the mindset that I want to try new games and I want to find out what's out there, what haven't I played yet.
So actually, Adam, could you talk to us about Cthulhu and the tabletop role playing game? What attracts people to games where their characters are going to die easily, especially when even like you can lose your character by dying, or you can lose your character by going insane. So talk to us about what history you have with the Cthulhu RPG game and what attracted you to it.
I actually haven't played the Cthulhu RPG.
Yeah.
I've only played the Arkham Horror board game.
Oh, right, yeah.
But again, your character can die extremely easy. Like, it's oh, you go up against a cult. Oh, yeah, I have Charlie Kane and I have no attack power. So
oh, and Adam, just so you're aware, if you enjoy Arkham Horror, that's another thing is I have really come across Arkham Horror quite a bit too, because some of the best tabletop role playing game fans, some of the best board game fans I know absolutely love that game, and I have quite a few friends who are really into it. But if you like RPGs, which clearly you do, and you like H.P. Lovecraft, definitely check out a guy by the name of Runeslinger. He has I hate to point to another. Well, yeah, we can point to other YouTubers. He's a fantastic YouTuber, and I think he's the best coverage on the internet on Cthulhu and tabletop role-playing games. And his coverage of what happened with 7th edition and his coverage of all the editions is stellar. Absolutely stellar. Runeslinger is really something special, and he's really good on Cthulhu and tabletop role-playing games specifically. Yeah.
great. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll check out some videos.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, I do agree with Ted in that sometimes sitting down for the Arkham Horror board game, it can be 6 or 7 hours. That's a long time.
When we get together for board games or for whatever it is that we're doing, there's a lot of times that you have to look at the time factor and is the enjoyment out of 6 or 7 hours of Arkham Horror, is the enjoyment worth that amount of time investment, or would you rather be doing a role-playing game where you can advance characters and advance a storyline, or would you like to play 6 or 7 games of another longer thing, or even like an hour-long game, or would you like to play even more games that are 20 to 30 minutes? So you have to factor all of that in. If Arkham Horror is a game for you, hey, by all means, I'm not trying to stop anyone from playing it. I'm just saying I played once. I don't feel the need to go for round 2.
Well,
it's kind of one of those things. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
One of the things that's really cool about Cthulhu, I think, is Cthulhu is similar to it's a spice, right? So it's like sriracha. You could just put Cthulhu on a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And you can see that's really been done. There is the Cthulhu traditional 1920s role-playing game. There's Cthulhu Tech that I talked about. There's a great tabletop role-playing game that is specifically Cthulhu in World War II. It's called Achtung Cthulhu. And then also there's Delta Green, which is modern Cthulhu. So, and that's just within the tabletop role-playing area. but you see Cthulhu mixed into a lot of, like, they're like, hey, here's a Western, let's throw Cthulhu into that, and
So
it's really
to
kind of
that
neat.
to that point, I had heard of, I think it's a tabletop game that it's board game or card game or something like that, where it mixes lucha libradors and Cthulhu.
Exactly.
Somehow.
Exactly.
Like, it has this really clever punny name to it too, but I can't remember what it was called, like Lucha Cthulhu or something like that. Yeah, so that's pretty ridiculous.
And
But,
one of the reasons why everybody loves H.P. Lovecraft so much and loves Cthulhu is he's in the public domain, that's a big deal. So you can just pick up that material and kind of, put it into things without dealing with license issues and things like that. And also Cthulhu has its own built-in fan base, and so you could just take that fan base and kind of attach it to other things. So Cthulhu is really interesting.
We are living in an era right now where people like mashups.
Oh yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
oh well, let's take this thing that you like and this other thing that you like, and we're just going to combine them together and see what comes out of it. And if you can take an element that is essentially what everyone would consider a licensed product, but not actually have to deal with any of the licensing, that's going to bring fans. So, like, all right, when are we going to see the Cthulian superhero mashup?
Oh yeah,
it won't be long.
I will point out, to some degree, the reason why we also have to match everything up is, to some extent, almost everything has been done before. Like, it's really hard to do something that no one's ever thought of, like well nigh impossible. Just because, like, there's that one quote from the Bible that, like, nothing under the sun is new again. Like, by a certain point in history, everything's been kind of done, and the only way you get new content is by taking a dash of this, a dash of that, and the output is something new and original.
You heard it here first. Ryan is predicting that once everything's been mashed up, 2 and 2. Well, now we'll start combining a third thing together.
The other thing is, if anybody is a fan of Cthulhu, and one, I think it's really hard to get into a Cthulhu game because there aren't that many people who run it, and getting 6 people who are going to get past that insane or dying part. But if you like it and you want to play, there's another way, which is Cthulhu mixed into fantasy, and I believe that is Lamentations of the Flame Princess,
right,
which is a game out from it's a European type game. It's got really strong H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu horror aspects within it, and that's another thing. Lamentations of the Flame Princess is another one of those games that really impacted 5th edition really well. It was, how do we do old school OSR, old school rules games in a new way? And I think there's a lot of ideas in 5th edition from Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and that creator was highly impacted by H.P. Lovecraft's work.
No, there's a lot. There's in the Facebook groups that I talk that I belong to. There's a lot of talk about that particular game, and
oh yeah,
it's definitely got a following. So
yeah, no question. Yeah.
So if I could jump us to another topic, I hate to
absolutely
jump us all around.
Yeah, sure.
But so everybody's favorite PC they have played and
favorite PC and why. Scott, you want to start off with this one? I know you're more the GM than PC. So
yeah. So one, it is very hard for me to think because I have so many favorite player characters. But I would say, so Aeson Shardgale, I would say, is probably my favorite player character. Yeah, but I'm not going to talk about him because he's on YouTube. And if anybody wants to see Aeson Shardgale, you can see every minute of his play right on YouTube. I'm going to talk about Kindwin. So my second favorite, and I need to talk about him because he can't, his games were never, shot on camera, so nobody knows about him. So Kindwin was a half-orc cleric. He was played in 3rd edition with a tremendous game master by the name of Patricia. She lives in Boston now. This is quite a while ago, but I knew her from college and knew her husband, and they had a great tabletop role playing game crew, and so I got to play Kindwin. He was a half orc cleric, and and basically, I would he used a mace, no edged weapons, and it was famous because I would just, I was really into combat, and I would heal people if I wasn't swinging my mace, and so I would just run in, and he would get knocked out constantly. So like half the combats, he would get knocked out, he would start to bleed out, and the whole crew just got used to stabilizing him or pouring a potion down his throat. And so Kindwin was this super combat-based cleric who was a half-orc. And the other thing is I really like the half-orc background, like where the idea of, this person was half human and half orc and had a really hard life, a terrible upbringing, and then he really kind of dedicated himself to, the devotion of his deity, and then also really helping people by healing people. And, and the other thing is that I really liked about him was healing diseases when I would go into a new town. And so, like, just people would, and the game master really did it different. Like, a lot of people don't do, a lot of game masters, I really encourage game masters realize the impact of a cleric to a town when they roll in. Like, people have ailments, people have diseases, people have terrible things that they can heal through prayer. And so the game master really got into that. Kindwin was tremendous character, and it's definitely one of my favorites.
Half accepted by none.
How about you, Nate? You got any PCs that jump to you?
Yeah, I have to say my like this past year or so favorite. I really liked Madras the Dragon. It's a barbarian sorcerer, dragonborn, and I enjoyed that one. I only got to play him for one session, but I really enjoyed him. And he was more of like a traditional concept of like a wild barbarian, in the sense of he used his longbow, because why the heck would you get in the melee combat sometimes? There's times to kill something with a hammer or an axe or a spear or whatever, and then there's times to shoot it. So more like the hunter-gatherer kind of barbarian, rather than the I'm going to max out my damage in combat, so I'm going to run up to this thing and hit it. So it was more like the thinking man barbarian than anything else. But my all-time favorite character was my mage cleric psionicist from back in the day.
That's harkening back all the way to the
Yeah.
second edition and pre-gaming with Dave and Ryan and
Yeah, we're talking
Steve.
about fourth edition Magic the Gathering times. So back in the day. Yeah, that was pretty ridiculous. I have to say that once you got past a certain level as a tri-class character in second edition,
there was just nothing you couldn't do.
There was really nothing. And
was that character working on becoming a dragon, perhaps?
he could have been. I guess. I mean, that was one of the things left to him power-wise. I mean, I think I ended at like 17th, 18th, 19th level in those three classes. And I mean, when you can cast Wish, and when you can cast True Resurrection, and you can do a whole bunch of psionic powers, like
now, and we're talking second edition psionics, when you were literally a god halfway up because of all of the things that you could do. Second edition psionics was so broken.
Some of it was. If you power gamed psionics in second edition, it could get really ugly really fast. I'll say that, Ted. I will not say it was broken.
Totally broken.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't remember too much about that character, except that he was kind of selfish and self-centered in a lot of ways. And that was kind of he seemed kind of chaotic, neutral in a way, based on how everybody else would have probably seen him, but he wasn't crazy or anything. It was just simply that no one really understood his motivations.
Well, it was a very odd campaign to begin with, because we were literally dealing with, the DM and the party was literally, split down the middle of these people are working for good and these people are working for evil. So like there was a lot of inner party conflict, and rarely would things ever work together, and it was definitely a game of the ages.
Yeah, so I mean, just for that was the highest level character I ever had. So from like start to finish, so it was nice to progress through all the levels. So I guess for amount of time I played him and how much fun I had playing him, that was going to be my like all-time character. So
Okay. How about you, Ryan?
All right, so let's see. What do I go with it? I've had a ton of character deaths that happened in my early years because I didn't understand that real life physics and consequences tend to befall characters, and second edition was pretty lethal.
And you also had the in the early days of our group,
Killer DMs.
Dave and Steve, they were killer DMs, and it's only in the more recent years that Dave's DMing style has certainly changed for a more narrative version.
Yeah, I would like to be able to play Rask, my sort of derelict paladin, a bit more, Oath of Vengeance, who's kind of modeled after Tom Waits and sort of Billy Bob Thornton and Bad Santa. Like, I think to see him in a campaign that runs a little longer would be pretty fun. And then also Elioth, my paladin warlock, who kind of has this conflicted thing of he technically like barristered his way into a fiend pact, warlock pact. So I feel like he would be pretty interesting because I would want to see like the interruptions or the intrusions of the fiendish pact on him a bit. So that'd be kind of cool.
So actually, if I can jump in, we talked about a lot of D&D characters there, but I have to give a little love to all the other games I've played, which I'll just throw it out there. So Deckard Rain was a Toreador vampire, my favorite character from Vampire the Masquerade. Cavajo was an Amerindian gunslinger that I played in Deadlands. Another huge favorite.
I want to play Deadlands so bad.
Yeah, it's an amazing game. So good. Very underplayed. Ark Sarbarian was a human smuggler who I played in D20 Star Wars. Kodai was a unicorn clan samurai from Legends of the Five Rings.
I really thought you were. I thought you were.
Fantastic
I thought you were ending it with he was a unicorn.
Nah, no. He used he had like a dual sword schools, and many more. When you ask my favorite character, my favorite player character, I could go down for like 10 systems and say this is my favorite character in this system. So yeah, thanks for letting me mention those four forgotten characters.
So myself, I have a long laundry list of characters that I adore and would love to jump in and play. And right now, my memory is utterly failing on a couple of their names. Ryan ran a game years ago, and I had a barbarian druid, and like one of his magic items was essentially gauntlets. So like
Ooh.
I actually had claw attacks. So
Nice.
he was very savage and primal, and the scope of that game twisted and changed, and it really I really enjoyed playing the primal aspect of that particular character. But again, for the life of me, I cannot remember his name. And that was in third edition. In second, and then transitioning into third, David ran a game.
Hey Ted.
Yeah.
Hey Ted. Raganthar.
Raganthar. Yeah, Raganthar is absolutely it. Thank you, Ryan. I'm rather impressed that after a decade or more, you still remember his name.
Give that man some inspiration.
Indeed, inspired.
yeah.
And then second, and then into third was my Undead Slayer. It was one of the kits that was in second edition for a fighter archetype, and like he would literally sing like this elven like funeral chant, or it was very very crazy every time he'd go into battle against undead. It was unsettling appearance for any who is not familiar with him, and it was just one of the great characters that I played. And when he transitioned into third, he just didn't have a steady amount of hit points because a lot was based on your con, and he had a low constitution and had already died in second edition and whatnot. But beyond those two, one of the games that I played in college, I had Kalarkian Demspawn, and he was thank you. He was a human wizard in a campaign setting where humans were the rare race, and wizardry, like I practiced magic out of a book, was seen as like devil magic. So I had to play political machinations and do everything within my power to really keep this character alive, because most of the world would kill me just for the things that are going on. And this was a game, Nate was in it. I believe we were somewhere between like 9 and 13 players over the course of the game.
Was this Iron Hawk?
Yes, it was absolutely the Iron
Oh,
Hawk.
I was playing the old Mad Druid.
Yes. And there was literally an encounter that we had many sessions building up to this point, but there was a battle line being drawn between myself and our good friend Matt's Barbarian. And literally, I had no idea how things were going to go, but I knew it was going to get to a drop down deadly fight where one of us was going to come out alive and the other one was just going to be dead. And there's no way a wizard is going to be able to stand up to a barbarian, regardless of how much work I do. So I did what I could. I used my intelligence, and I talked to every single person that I thought would side with me. And it was literally, there were 2 NPCs in the party as well when it actually happened. It was the barbarian and his one monstrous NPC. Everyone else sided with me, and I literally had to do nothing against the barbarian. The rest of the party took him down. I was like, "Yep, this is awesome." and the player is like, "Look, I got an awesome death. I couldn't be happier at the outcome." And the game literally ended with me bringing about a monstrous apocalypse, because I really was foul and evil. And I had started off, talking to the DM that I wanted this character arc of, a transitioning into evil and doing all of these things to get power and what have you. And it like everything just played out really so well. And the game literally ended with me standing on the prow of one of these flying warships as essentially the things under my control begin to descend upon the world, as I just stand there cackling in mad amounts of power. I was like, yep, I couldn't ask for, a better ending than that.
Poor Tanakh. He could have saved the world.
Yep, if he only would have, killed that piddly little wizard. And then, other than that character, from, a different standpoint, where I'm used to playing games where magic items are a bit of a rarity. Dave ran a game in Shattered Realm. We've done some videos on this. But Shattered Realm was a heavily magic world. And at the end of when we stopped the campaign, every character had piles and piles of magic items on their person. And when I mean that, I mean everyone had up to 5 backup weapons on their character, because we all had the bracelets of storing, quivers of Ilhona, all of these different magical ways of storage. We all had it all in spades. And then on top of that, there was a party treasure list that was typed 5 pages long.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Wait, this is a Dave game?
Yes, this was a Dave's game.
I don't know. I gotta see this list. I don't believe it. I've heard these.
Gosh.
I've heard these stories.
So this character
allegedly.
This character was Balkram, my bugbear barbarian, and he had a cloak that was sentient, and as long as I was doing things that was chaotic and made it happy, then it would just use its magic to be able to help me out. So I had the ability to fly, go intangible, giant growth, and literally at one point in time we were encountering a dragon. I flew inside it using my intangibility, and like Dave's like, all right, well, you automatically are gonna crit because you're inside. We were high level, which was another thing that Dave didn't normally do. So like when I actually rolled a critical hit, it's like, well, that's quadruple damage. So I literally just transitioned to inside the thing, and using my Morning Star, I just crushed every single one of its organs, and the thing fell out of the sky. I'm like, yep, that's how you do it.
Done and done.
So like for the more mechanical reasons, and just in the earlier days of our Nerdarchy group, we didn't get those massive amounts of power. So getting to see the characters transition into those high levels with the high levels of magic items, like I loved that character. And the longer you play a character, the more you're really gonna love it, the more you're gonna get into what it can actually do. And there were some great storylines that I would love to be able to go back and revisit. Dave and Ryan's brother Jeremy was literally the rightful heir to the throne, and it turns out that his family was like legitimate usurpers, and they've just kind of had shunted him off to the side, like, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. And so like we had ended at the city gates with this vast horde of magical loot, ready to just put our traveling companion back on the throne, and that's where we stopped playing. And I'm like, what? So
well, wait, I had a quick question. So Adam, you had talked about Merrick earlier and how he's transitioning from 4th to 5th, and he's been like kind of invited. He's an invite character. Is he your favorite character?
Oh man, I mean, that's tough. He's a blast to play because while you're good, you get to kind of like he's a carouser. Like he does the roll. He rolls the 100. Stuff happens. Like he was fortunate last week. He actually got 130 gold. Awesome.
Nice.
But I'm sure at some point he's going to wake up naked in a barrel in an alley. But
naked in a barrel
and also
in an alley.
too,
yeah.
It'll be a barrel full of ice, and then he'll have a suture on the side of where his kidney once was.
That's Shadowrun.
Yeah.
My DM would probably do that.
I hear you.
Probably not too far.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a possibility. He is a blast to play. I mean, the very first D&D character I played, Sir Quinn, the 4th edition Warlord, which I took him from. I think I started at level 6 because I came into the campaign kind of late, and we actually took them to max level, and he ended up becoming the king of Waterdeep, and it ended. That was one of my story arcs that I had, and I was like, yeah, this is good. But DM made it so that the crown that my character wore was extremely heavy. Like there was all kinds of consequences. So I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. The DM would be like, oh, that's a great idea. As a result, all of this bad stuff happens over here. So he was very very good at creating consequence and really getting me into that character, thinking about, okay, I need to be very careful because this character is kingdom. So a wrong decision can have a huge impact. And he was very good at making consequences, making it very stressful.
Yeah, it's a good GM definitely makes the game feel like there's stakes and repercussions to your actions. Like you have agency to do whatever you want. It's just you're not always going to like the outcomes because everyone else has their own agenda as well. So that's that's a sign of a good dungeon master, to make your choices feel like they matter, for better or for worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he loved it because he always said, like, I could always tell, when my brain was going, because he would throw these curveballs at me. And I'm someone, I like to kind of, we play every week, so I like to have that week to deliberate. He kind of leaves cliffhangers. He's like, okay, next week, come back and tell me what you come up with.
You can't always end on a cliffhanger, but every once in a while, it's really good to put that out there where it's like, all right, there's something that's going to happen, and we'll find out what it is next time.
So you know what? Actually, the best GM tip for like something happening that you as a dungeon master doesn't fucking know how to resolve, and like you're stressing about, and it's on a cliffhanger, and everybody will think you're brilliant for doing it, but it's really you figuring out how you're going to resolve the thing that your player just sprung upon you.
It's an old favorite tactic. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and sometimes you need a week or two to think about things.
Yeah, absolutely. Let it percolate.
Yeah, and to be honest, full disclaimer, I have never DM'd a game. I have been a player, but I definitely feel, this is definitely a shout out to you guys at Nerdarchy. I feel like your channel, your videos have actually made me a better player. Maybe the DM agree, but I feel that it has.
Well, I mean,
Adam,
that's kind of one of the that's kind of one of the reasons why we are doing what we're doing. It's fun to talk about it, but at the end, like, we are hoping to guide people to become better role players and better gamers in general. There's player tips as well as GM tips, so it's legitimately we're doing this to make the hobby better for all. So when you're a better,
and also, Adam, I would.
Go ahead, Scott.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Thanks. I would jump in there, Adam, and I would really encourage you to definitely consider game mastering, at least for a one-shot or for a small campaign, like a limited campaign, maybe some limited number. So, and the reason why is the reason why is brown ale and pickled fish. Right? If you're talking about brown ale and pickled fish for your character, you're thinking about player characters in the way that brings non-player characters to life. You're thinking about the world in sense and in in experiences that go beyond hack and slash. And the other thing that I would say is the Dungeons and Dragons is it's a multi-million-dollar property. There's a movie coming out, and Wizards of the Coast has done studies, and they say by far the #1 issue that the game has right now is getting qualified game masters out there who can run for other people. So really, I would really encourage you to take the leap and do a one-shot or do a limited session for a campaign for a small group, because really, that's how the hobby grows. And if you're talking about brown ale and pickled fish, you're ready to game master. I guarantee it.
So in that regard, you think it's a good idea to start off at, okay, characters are going to be level 1 characters?
Yes.
Because that minimizes
if you start off as your first time DM and you're not dealing with level 1 characters, you're dealing with not only every single character's wealth of abilities from 1 to wherever they start off with, but you're also not dealing with the typical hazards and things that low levels have to deal with. Now, if you're afraid of, well, I might kill the players, well, then go ahead and start them off at 3rd level and kind of work up to what you feel is going to be the appropriate level of challenge. So it's like, oh, well, how many orcs can they fight, or how many displacer beasts is going to be, a good fight versus a deadly fight. Some of that stuff is going to be needed to figure out, get mathified, as some might say, and like the formulas that are in the books and the Unearthed Arcana, it's only going to take you so far, because only you as the DM know what your players are capable of not only what's on their character sheet, but their own brains and tactics that they're willing to use. If you have players who are, well, every encounter we just charge in without any kind of tactics, well, you need to be careful of using certain certain types of monsters and encounters against them. Whereas if they're overly thinking things and using, layers and layers of tactics, well, then you're going to need to spice some stuff up because they're going to be ready for those easier encounters.
I had a group of new players. I started them off at first level, threw a Nothic at them. They lived. It was just fine. So I think that, as long as you have players that are okay with maybe a character dying, I just say, start off at first, because it's a completely different experience from being in like a first time GM and starting at a higher level. I would go with starting at first. And just as long as you've got players that, understand, you might kill one of them. And that'll make it real, that'll make it, I think, a more interesting campaign, because the players I had in the new group, they were never sure if I was going to save them, being the DM, or if I was going to let them die. And there was a few close calls. There was one where I had a goblin with 2 scimitars that got loose of a binding enchantment. He double critted the halfling, and I knew she was down, but as the final act, kicked her off a 40-foot cliff. She had a magic item that saved her, barely, but it was still a 50-50 chance. She was on her last death roll. Thankfully, someone got to her. But they all knew I was serious and that someone could die.
Well,
So,
in the Nerdarchy D&D games, my players are 12th level, and we've had as many as 9 players at the table. And then there's Dave's game, which I believe it's had as many as 6 or 7 players at a table, and they're 11th level. And of actual in-game deaths, there's only been 1. So
5th
that's
is
saying
nice.
a lot.
5th is nice for not making it so easy to kill players.
Yeah, if you get 3 death saves,
Yeah, that's plenty of time.
lean on them.
Tell that to Virus.
Well, yeah.
So actually, I'll jump in here on that one. So Adam, just so you're aware, one of the reasons the Nerdarchy guys have me on is because I often am on a completely different wavelength than them. So I'll give you my 2 cents, right? So the Nerdarchy guys, so my 2 cents is never start at first level. Never even play at first level. I would start at 4th, 8th, or 12th level. And these guys are saying, hey, be careful because you don't want to kill your player characters.
Well, let me interrupt real quick. I'm not saying it's about killing the player characters. It's a lot to take in, and as a new DM,
Power creep is a lot harder. Yeah.
As a new DM, it's really good to experiment with. Well, what can be a credible threat? Well, at level 1, you've got the world open to you, and you have the ability to figure out exactly what you want to do. And if you're looking at starting a long campaign, that's the perfect place to do it. I know that's not your mentality, Scott.
Exactly.
But you can really experiment with fighting spiders and rats and orcs and goblins and kobolds and all of the typical tropes that people are used to doing that aren't going to be a challenge for 8th and 12th level unless the DM does a lot of work. So by starting at first level as a new time GM, you have the ability to really figure out, where do I want this to go? How long do I want this to go? And not get confused or overwhelmed by all the options of what the characters can do and all of the monster choices that are in the manual. Whereas if you say, okay, well, I'm going to look at the monsters that are a challenge 2 or under for a new player, or for new for low level PCs, that really shortens your options of what you can throw at them and what you can do. So that's feel free to continue with your points.
Yeah, what you were saying, Scott.
Yeah, so where I was going is I come at it from a completely different wavelength. And so these guys, I think they're right from perspective of rules and game mechanics and picking the right monsters. But when you're starting a game and you're getting players together, you can kill them, you can get the rules wrong, you could do a million things, but you cannot bore them. And in my opinion, first level is boring. right? So you start them at 4th, 8th, or 12th level. You bring them in, and you let them overwhelm you. Like, and they will remember, their stories will be, I ran this 8th level character, it did this awesome things, I slew, the GM's monsters really quickly. They're going to remember that they were epic. Whereas I feel
Here's the
like
thing,
when I'm
like-
first level, I remember that I sucked. My take.
Well, but the only problem with that, you get it's almost like the embarrassment of riches, right? For a new player to start running a 6th or an 8th level character, like that's a bit excessive. Like second through 4th is pretty manageable because what you can actually do at those levels, there aren't a ton of options. And sometimes I feel like you just flood people with, as a new player, what they're going to do. Like, a little shameless plug here, but I wrote like the Grinch Who Stole Father's Winter's Day, which is basically the Grinch. Like, it's taking the Grinch into a D&D adventure. What really works about that is it's a story that pretty much everyone from a North knows. So if you were to run a story that's like familiar to everyone who's a new player, then I think that's going to they're going to easily recognize it's thinly veiled as the Grinch once they start into the adventure. And you as the GM, that's already source material that you know too. So I mean, you could take like little one shots of pre-published stuff as well, and just run that.
So that is a very good point, Ryan. Using a prepared adventure, it tells you what levels typically to run things. That's a way to give to put your hand in, throw the dice, if you will, as a first time GM without actually having to worry about encounter balance and session prep. And if you're able to run the prepared stuff and you're like, oh well, this isn't so bad, maybe I'll try homebrewing or creating my own. So that's definitely a good transition.
Perfect.
All right. So, is there any last thing that you want to ask or bring up? We've been going for almost an hour and a half here.
Really, I would just like to say thank you to you guys. Huge thank you. I mean, personally, your channel is amazing. I mean, not only that, I was going to ask, who does your artwork?
It's Ryan.
Amazing.
Well, no, if it's the video thumbnails, like that's stuff that I find that's usually Wizards of the Coast stuff. But if it's like the cartoonish sort of goblin stuff, that's the cartooning stuff. So yeah, I definitely am. I would literally not have the time for the video thumbnail illustrations because there's a ton of it. I know the amount of work that would go into pieces like that, and I simply would not have the time. So.
Well, yeah. Not until we invent a time machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Nate's on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said, Nate. Well said.
So, Adam, you're welcome. You say thank you. We enjoy doing this. It's lot of video content that gets out there, and we do it to help people be better role players and to enjoy and to stretch beyond the horizons of D&D. There are other games out there, and right now we're Scott's getting ready to run Gamma World for us,
which is 4th edition based.
So I'm kind of excited to get back into that. I'm torn as to whether or not I'm going to create a new character or use a character that I created and never played.
Myconid.
Yes, my Myconid Gary of the Gygaxian religion. He's going to be awesome.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Absolutely.
Yeah, solid. Yeah. So I guess we should close it out. We've held Adam hostage long enough, and we're gonna have to have a ransom for gold, and it's a whole thing. Also, the viewers. Thanks everybody for watching. What's that?
Just copper pieces.
And copper, about 50 copper.
1 million copper.
Yeah, and I really have a hankering now for brown ale and pickled fish. So.
Oh man, fish and chips is the freaking best. I love a dark ale.
All right, so thanks for watching, and I guess until next time, guys, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.